Hello, I'm still not Corey, and I'm still baffled by the Tories. This video is brought to you by my new merch. Buy my new merch. Buy my new merch. Buy it. Buy it. Buy my new merch. Before we get into the video, please leave a comment and let me know if you are a Tory. If you don't leave a comment, then you are a Tory. I am sorry. I do not make the rules. You must comment to prove that you are not a Tory. What do you think causes crime? Because a member of the British government thinks it's Doctor Who.
Everywhere, not at least within the cultural sphere, there seems to be a call from a tiny yet very vocal minority that every male character or good role model must have a female replacement.
That is so not true. Like, Superman? Has Superman been replaced by a woman? Yes, there are female versions of the character, but I wouldn't say that Supergirl has fully replaced Superman, right? There's a lot of Superman media. I don't think Batwoman has replaced Batman. You can add new role models. It doesn't take away from the role models that men have. Oh my lord. If you look at films nowadays, they're still dominated by men. Like, the main characters are still overwhelmingly men. I think there are plenty of male role models. I have no idea. I have no idea what he's on about.
One only needs to look at the discussion surrounding who will play the next James Bond. And it's not just James Bond.
Oh no! A woman playing James Bond? How terrible! What a loss for men in their role model. Except, you know, generally, not the best role model. He's cool, I'll give you that. Wouldn't say he's a role model for men. I don't think it's that big a deal to have, like, a woman step into that role. For one thing, it doesn't make that much of a difference in terms of you can still enjoy it if it's a woman. It's just that more people can get something out of it, and ultimately, there have been a ton of guys doing that role. Who cares? Why does it matter? In a few years, it'll be a man again. Probably. It's not that big of a deal. It's just some films. It's just some films. This isn't quite like turning not white characters into white characters or turning women into men, because there are a ton of male characters and there are a ton of white characters. There are a ton of these role models for men, but like none for a woman. And there are a massive history associated with these male characters. And we've done so much with them. And like, why not just do something else? Why not just like change it slightly? Why not just add something interesting to the mix? Like Sherlock Holmes, for example, right? Sherlock Holmes has been done so many times. Sherlock Holmes has been a mouse, for God's sake. Best Sherlock Holmes adaptation, by the way. But Sherlock Holmes has been a mouse. So, like, why not make Sherlock a lady? That'd be interesting. Let's see what Lady Sherlock Holmes is up to. That'd be fun. You get to see a new side of the character if you do that, because obviously, generally, women have different experiences in the world than men. So there's something new there. It's something interesting. If you were to change the race, the way that they had to interact with the world would be different. It adds a new interesting layer. And to kind of further my point, usually when a character is a man, and especially if it's a white man, there is not much about the character that dictates, like sort of, that absolutely ties him to that gender. Like, there's not, right? You can easily kind of change that and not change too much about the character. But the way that we write female characters, you know, and the way that we usually write women characters, it's kind of tied to their gender a lot, right? Like, if you have a character that is a woman, usually people write it in a way where they kind of almost need to justify why it's a woman doing this thing. Like, so often women characters and their backstory and, you know, everything that sort of informs them gets very much tied to them being a woman. Like, look at Kill Bill. That character is a woman in an action film. Great character, but also tied very heavily to sort of women's issues, if that makes sense. If you were to change the bride from Kill Bill to a man, it wouldn't quite work. You'd lose quite a bit of that character, you know? Same for, say, Sarah Connor, right? If you were to change Sarah Connor to a man, you would lose a lot of that character, right? Like, because it is so tied to that sort of motherhood and being a woman. All of these characters, like so many of these female characters, so many of these women characters have so much of them tied to their gender. That is just the way that we tend to write characters that aren't straight white men. And I know the MP wasn't talking about being straight or white in there, but it is kind of all tied in together. There's a reason that I'm bringing it up. Because ultimately, when you write a character like that, you find that in our culture, you tend to need to justify why a character isn't straight or white or a man. You need to have almost a reason for them being anything other than that. It's not as common as you'd think to have a character not be a straight white guy just because, for no deeper reason, nothing that fully ties into the character's story or whatever. For example, let's use Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. There is nothing in Superman and Batman's character that dictates they need to be men, right? There's nothing inherent in their origin story, in their characterization, that means that they absolutely need to be a man. That's why, like, sort of Batwoman and Supergirl, they work. You could fully make Clark Kent a woman, and it wouldn't really change much at all. Wonder Woman, on the other hand, you're not getting away with that one. You could not do that. You could not change Wonder Woman to a man and have it be remotely the same story, because so much of her history, so much of her character is informed by her gender. And the same goes for so many other characters. That's why changing a man to a woman as a character is generally fine, because it doesn't alter the character all that much. In fact, it can add a new dimension in an interesting way. But doing the opposite, it doesn't work. And I get it. It is really interesting when you have stories about characters and it dives into kind of, their race, their gender, all of that sort of stuff. It can inform a character really interestingly. But also it's nice just to have a character that just doesn't have, like, their story doesn't have anything to do with that.
And it's not just James Bond. In recent years, we have seen Doctor Who, Ghostbusters, Luke Skywalker, The Equalizer.
Okay, those examples are rubbish. One, Doctor Who. Yes, the Doctor is a woman, but the Doctor can regenerate. We've known for ages that Time Lords can change gender. So why on earth would the Doctor have to be a man forever? In fact, it doesn't make any sense. The Doctor was a man for like 13 regenerations, right? For like 13 in a row. That doesn't make much sense. And ultimately, young boys can still look up to the Doctor and be like, yeah, I like that. And there are other characters in Doctor Who. There are companions, and there are the previous Doctors. You can look at all of those and still have role models for young boys. Jodie Whittaker is leaving. You have the option to change the Doctor constantly. The Doctor could be a man again. It's not that big a deal. It's about time that the Doctor was a woman, honestly. And yes, in 2016, there was a not very good Ghostbusters film, but it being not very good had basically nothing to do with them all being women. And now, the new Ghostbusters film has an even mix. You're not really making a good point here. We had one Ghostbusters film that was all men, we've had one that was all women, and now we've got one that's a mix. That is fine. That is even. We're all good. And again, there is still the old Ghostbusters film. And in the old Ghostbusters film, I don't think there are many good male role models in that either. If your issue is the fact that, like, male role models are being taken away, these are not really role models. I don't think the Doctor is a role model who does, like, genocides on the daily. I don't think the Ghostbusters were a role model, just a bunch of guys. This guy just seems like someone that isn't comfortable with there being more female characters, because ultimately, they're mostly a non-issue, right? Like, the Doctor can change constantly and was never sort of inherently masculine. There's nothing really about the Doctor, at least in the newer series, that absolutely tied them to being a man or a woman. Time Lords can just completely change themselves whenever they die. Like, I think it's fine. It's fine. Do not get me started on Luke Skywalker. If you look at the new Star Wars films and you look at the core trio and compare it to the core trio of the original trilogy, you've got the same thing going on there. In the sequel trilogy, you've got two men, Finn and Poe, and one woman, Rey. And in the old trilogy, you've got one woman, Leia, and two men, Han and Luke. That is the same. It is literally the same ratio, and completely ignoring that Rey and Luke Skywalker were in a film together. Of course they were. And what do you want Mark Hamill doing Star Wars films? I don't think he's super up for it. I don't think he wants to be doing Star Wars films until he dies. I don't think it's fair to say that Luke Skywalker was replaced by a woman. Like, yes, the Jedi in the new trilogy is a woman, but there are still two guys. There are still two guys. They're still there, and so is Luke Skywalker. He's also still there. Plus, like, most of the new shows, like The Mandalorian, that is around a guy as well. Like, there is no shortage of male role models. This is just a complete non-issue.
All replaced by women, and men are left with the Craze and Tommy Shelby. Is there any wonder we are seeing so many young men committing crime?
Right. So the Ghostbusters weren't very much doing legal things. Like, they were definitely breaking the law. That's why the EPA came in their film. The Doctor is constantly breaking the law. Luke Skywalker straight up murders people. He's killing people. For good, bear in mind, but he's still killing people. The idea that all of the good male role models are being replaced by women, and now there are only criminals as male role models, and that is the reason for high crime rates amongst young men, is insane. That is absolutely insane. I cannot believe a a Tory member of Parliament said that on record as though it meant something. That is insane. If you actually want to understand why there are high crime rates, you can look at poverty. Poverty correlates pretty heavily with crime. And you know what party likes to put people in poverty? That's right, it's the Tories! So my dear friend, instead of standing in Parliament complaining about there not being enough boys for me to watch on TV, go ahead and stop being a fucking Tory. That will probably solve the problem quite a bit quicker than whinging about there being too many women. Thank you very much for watching. That was very, very kind of you. You can see my patrons going past here. You can become a patron if you would like. It's very nice. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, all the other stuff. Links in the description. You can join my Discord, I guess. You can go check out my podcast, Sigh Guys. It is very enjoyable. I think that is more or less everything I need to say, except for a very special thank you to my patrons Renegade and Sarah, and that is all for now. Goodbye.